The mining colony was dead. Every sensor showed the same thing. No power, no heat signatures, no movement, just another abandoned rock floating at the edge of human space. Taman stood on the bridge of his salvage ship, staring at the readings. His fingers drummed against the console. "Looks empty," Nari said from behind him. She was reviewing medical supplies, always prepared for the worst. "Just like the last 5 sites we checked." Taman nodded, but something felt wrong. The colony wasn't human-built. The architecture was different. Elegant in a way human structures never were. Curved walls and crystalline support beams that caught the light from distant stars. This was Velkari construction. The Velkari were one of the wealthiest species in the galaxy, known for their advanced technology and cold business practices. They didn't abandon facilities without good reason. "We're going in anyway," Taman decided. "Prep the shuttle." His crew of 5 moved with practiced efficiency. They had been working together for 3 years, ever since Taman left military service. He trusted them with his life. Nari gathered her medical kit. Yuno checked weapons, though they rarely needed them. Minseo ran final diagnostics on their suits. The shuttle ride to the colony was quiet. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Salvage runs were usually boring. Find some old equipment, catalog it, haul it back for resale. Sometimes they found valuable tech, sometimes just scrap metal. But empty colonies always carried ghosts of their former occupants. They docked at the main airlock. The seal was still intact, which was unusual. If the colony was abandoned normally, the airlocks would be open or damaged. This one was deliberately secured. Taman felt his pulse quicken. The interior was pristine. No signs of battle, no damage, no bodies. Just empty corridors lit by emergency lighting that still functioned after who knew how many years. Their boots echoed on metal floors as they moved deeper into the facility. "This wasn't abandoned," Minseo whispered. "This was sealed." She was right. Every door they passed was locked from the outside. Every terminal was wiped clean. Someone had systematically shut down this place and left it intact. But why they reached the central chamber? It was a processing facility of some kind, with massive machines standing silent in the darkness. And there, in the center of the room, was a containment pod. It was Velkari design, used for long-term storage or transport, except this one was still active. A small green light blinked on its control panel. "Is something alive in there?" Junyo asked, raising his weapon. Taman approached carefully. He wiped dust from the viewing window and looked inside. His breath caught in his throat. A girl, young, maybe 13 or 14 by human standards. Her skin was pale blue with luminescent markings that pulsed weakly. Velkari. She was curled in a fetal position, wearing torn clothing. Her eyes were closed. The pod's life support was failing. The numbers on the display were all in critical ranges. "Nari, get over here now," Taman shouted. Nari ran to his side and looked through the window. Her professional mask slipped for just a moment, replaced by horror. "How long has she been in there?" "Too long," Taman said, already working on the control panel. "Help me get this open." The pod systems were designed for Velkari operators, but Taman had studied enough alien tech during his military service. He bypassed 3 security protocols and manually triggered the release mechanism. The pod hissed open, releasing stale air that smelled of recycled atmosphere and fear. The girl collapsed forward. Taman caught her before she hit the floor. She was light, far too light, malnourished. Her pulse was weak and irregular under his fingers. "Med Bay, now," Nari ordered, and they ran. Back on the ship, Nari worked for 2 hours straight. She hooked the girl to every monitor, started 3 different IV lines, and injected medications that Taman couldn't name. He stood in the corner watching, feeling helpless. This was Nari's domain. All he could do was wait. Finally, the numbers stabilized. The girl's breathing became more regular. Her luminescent markings began to pulse with more strength. "She'll live," Nari said, exhaustion clear in her voice. But she was close. Another day and we would have found a corpse. "Who would leave a child in a sealed pod?" Yunyo asked. He had been standing guard at the door as if enemies might appear at any moment. "We need answers," Taman said. "But first we need to let her rest." The girl woke 6 hours later. Her eyes opened suddenly, filled with panic. She tried to sit up but was too weak. She looked around the med bay with terror, seeing unfamiliar faces and alien technology. Then she started crying. Taman moved slowly, keeping his hands visible. He spoke softly in trade standard, the common language most species learned. "You're safe. We found you." You were in a pod. You were dying. The girl stared at him. Her luminescent markings flickered rapidly, which Taman knew indicated extreme stress in Velkari. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. Nari held a cup of water to her lips. After drinking, the girl found her voice. It was small and broken. Why did you open it? The question surprised Taman. Because you were dying. That was the point, she whispered. They left me there to die. Silence filled the med bay. Everyone understood the implication immediately. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a casualty of some disaster. This was deliberate. Who left you? Taman asked gently. The girl's eyes filled with fresh tears. Her whole body shook. When she answered, her voice was barely audible. My family. Over the next few hours, the story emerged in broken pieces. The girl's name was Lyra. She was the youngest daughter of Velkir Thon, a high-ranking trade minister in Velkari society. She had been born with a genetic condition that prevented her from interfacing with Velkari neural technology. In Velkari culture, this made her worthless. Velkari society was built on efficiency and economic value. Every family member was expected to contribute to the family's wealth and status. Children who couldn't use neural interfaces couldn't work in most professions. They were seen as drains on resources, failures of genetic planning. Lyra's parents had tried to hide her condition at first, but as she grew older, it became impossible to conceal. Other families began to question the Thon family's genetic quality. Business partnerships were threatened. Her older siblings were denied marriage prospects because of her. So her family made a decision. They told Lyra they were taking a trip to inspect mining operations. They brought her to this abandoned colony. They put her in the containment pod. They set the life support to minimal levels, and they left. My father said it was necessary, Lyra said, staring at her hands. My mother cried but didn't stop him. My brother and sister just watched. They all watched as they sealed the pod. Taman felt rage building in his chest. He had seen terrible things during his military service. He had lost his own sister to a preventable accident because bureaucrats deemed the safety measures too expensive. He knew what it felt like to be failed by those who should protect you. How long were you in there? Nari asked. I don't know, Lyra said. Time stopped meaning anything. I just waited to die. Taman knelt beside her bed. He looked directly into her eyes. You're not going to die. Not today, not tomorrow. You're under human protection now. Why? Lyra asked. I'm defective. I'm worthless. Even my own family knew that. Your family was wrong, Taman said firmly. Every life has value. That's something humans believe with everything we are, and I'm going to prove it to you. Lyra didn't believe him. Taman could see it in her eyes. She had been broken by abandonment, by the knowledge that her own blood had thrown her away. Words wouldn't heal that wound, but actions would. Taman stood and looked at his crew. They all nodded. They understood what was coming. They were going to take care of this girl, and then they were going to make sure her family regretted ever leaving her behind. 3 weeks passed on the Resilience. Lyra grew stronger every day, though the damage went deeper than physical weakness. She barely spoke during the first week. She would wake up screaming from nightmares, calling for a mother who had abandoned her. She refused to eat until Nari sat with her, explaining patiently that food was not a reward to be earned but a basic right. Taman watched her struggle with the simple concept that she deserved to exist. It broke something inside him. He spent hours in her room just sitting quietly. Sometimes he read human books aloud. Sometimes he talked about his crew, about their adventures, about the beautiful and terrible things they had seen in space. He never pushed her to respond. He just wanted her to know she wasn't alone. Slowly, Lyra began to emerge from her shell. She started asking questions. Small ones at first. Why did humans eat so many different foods? Why did they laugh so loudly? Why did Nari check on her even when she wasn't scheduled to work? Taman answered honestly. Because we care. That's what people do when they care about someone. Even when that person is worthless? Lyra asked. You're not worthless, Taman said for what felt like the 100th time. Say it with me. I am not worthless, Lyra looked away. I can't. Then I'll keep saying it until you believe me. On the 15th day, Lyra asked to leave her room. Taman took her on a tour of the ship. The Resilience was old and patched together from a dozen different vessels, but it was home. He showed her the bridge where Junho plotted their courses through dangerous space. He showed her the cargo bay where Minseo repaired salvaged equipment. He showed her the galley where everyone gathered for meals. The crew treated Lyra with gentle warmth. They never mentioned her condition or her family. They just included her in their routines. Minseo taught her how to identify different types of metal. Yunyo let her watch him navigate. Nari showed her basic medical procedures. Lyra absorbed everything like a sponge. She was intelligent and curious when she allowed herself to be. But she still flinched whenever someone moved too quickly. She still apologized constantly for taking up space or asking questions. On the 18th day, Taman found her crying in the observation deck. She was staring out at the stars, her luminescent markings pulsing with sadness. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I keep thinking about them," Lyra said quietly. "My family. I know what they did was wrong. You've told me that. Nari has told me that. But they're still my family. I still remember when my mother used to sing to me before they knew about my condition. I remember my father teaching me to count in the old Velkari way. I remember playing games with my siblings. Those memories are real," Taman said. "The love you felt was real. What happened doesn't erase that. Then why does it hurt so much? Because betrayal always hurts the most when it comes from people we love." Lyra wiped her eyes. "Do you know what the worst part is? In Velkari society, what they did wasn't even illegal. There are laws that protect families who make difficult economic choices. That's what they call it. Difficult economic choices." Taman felt his jaw tighten. "Tell me more about these laws." Over the next few days, Lyra explained Velkari culture in detail. She had been educated before her condition became obvious, so she understood how her society functioned. Every family was essentially a small corporation. Children were investments. They received resources based on their potential future contributions. When a child was born with defects, physical or mental, families had options. They could pay for expensive treatments if they believed the child could eventually contribute. They could sell the child to labor pools where defective individuals worked low-value jobs. Or they could abandon the child in remote locations. The third option was most common among high-status families. It preserved their genetic reputation. It avoided the shame of having a defective family member in public. It was clean and final. "How many children are abandoned each year?" Taman asked. "I don't know exact numbers," Lyra said. "It's not something people talk about openly. But everyone knows families who have done it. It's just accepted. And the government allows this? The government encourages it. They say it maintains genetic quality and economic efficiency. They publish guidelines on how to identify defective children early and make appropriate choices." Taman stood up and paced the room. His mind was racing. He had dealt with many alien cultures during his military service. Some had practices humans found strange or uncomfortable, but this was different. This was systematic disposal of children deemed inconvenient. "Your father is a trade minister," Taman said. "That means he's important?" "Very important," Lyra confirmed. "The Thon family controls shipping routes throughout 3 sectors. They have contracts with dozens of species. My father negotiates deals worth billions of credits." "And your mother?" "She manages family investments. My brother was being trained to take over the shipping operations. My sister was studying diplomatic relations." Lyra's voice grew softer. "I was supposed to join the family business too. Before they found out about my condition, I used to imagine working alongside them, making them proud." "What happened when they found out?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "Everything changed. They stopped looking at me the same way. My father wouldn't speak to me directly anymore. He gave instructions to my mother about me, like I was a piece of furniture to be moved. My siblings started pretending I didn't exist. Family meals became silent. I ate alone in my room. How long did that last? Almost 2 years. Then one day my father announced we were taking a trip. He said it was educational. I was so happy. I thought maybe things were getting better. I thought maybe they had forgiven me for being defective." Lyra's luminescent markings flickered rapidly. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid," Taman said firmly. "You were a child who loved her family. That's not stupidity. That's trust. They betrayed that trust. But I should have known. No, there's no should have known. They were the adults. They were the ones with responsibility. What they did was evil." The word hung in the air. Evil. Lyra stared at Taman. "In Velkari culture, evil is defined by inefficiency and waste. What my family did was neither. It was logical and practical." "Then Velkari culture has a broken definition of evil," Taman said. In human culture, evil is treating people as disposable. Evil is abandoning a child who trusts you. Evil is choosing money and reputation over love and responsibility. Lyra looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wish I had died in that pod. Then I wouldn't have to feel all of this. Taman knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. I understand that feeling. After I lost my sister, I felt the same way. The pain of living seemed worse than the alternative. But pain means you're still here. Pain means you survived, and survival is the first step toward something better. What's the second step? Deciding that you deserve better? Deciding that your life has meaning beyond what your family told you? Deciding to prove them wrong? I don't know if I can do that. You don't have to know yet, Taman said. You just have to keep waking up every day. The rest will come. That night, Taman couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lyra's words. The systematic nature of Velkari abandonment. The legal protections for families who disposed of their children. The cultural acceptance of treating young lives as business decisions. He thought about his own sister. She had died because a corporation chose profit over safety. She had died because people in power decided her life was worth less than their quarterly earnings. He had spent years angry at a system that allowed such choices. Now he had found a girl who represented thousands, maybe millions of children thrown away by that same logic. Different species, different culture, same fundamental evil. Treating lives as numbers on a balance sheet. Tamin made a decision that night. He couldn't save his sister. But he could save Lyra. More than that, he could make sure her story was heard. He could force the galaxy to see what the Velkari did in the darkness of abandoned colonies. And he could make Lyra's family understand what they had destroyed. The next morning, Taman called his crew together. He explained his plan. It was ambitious and probably impossible. It would make powerful enemies. It might ruin all of them. Nari spoke first. I'm in, Junho nodded. Someone needs to stand up to them, Minso smiled grimly. Let's make them regret everything. Taman looked at each of them. These were good people. They didn't have to risk anything for one alien girl, but they were going to anyway because that's what humans did. They protected the vulnerable. They stood up to bullies. They fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. It was time to show the Velkari what humanity was capable of when you hurt one of their own. Taman wasn't a soldier anymore, but he still thought like one. Every mission needed intelligence, planning, and clear objectives. You couldn't fight an enemy you didn't understand. You couldn't win a war without knowing your opponent's weaknesses. The Velkari were powerful. They controlled massive trade networks. They had advanced technology. They had political influence across dozens of systems. A direct confrontation would be suicide. But Taman had learned long ago that the strongest fortresses often had the simplest vulnerabilities. He started his research in the ship's database, reading everything available about Velkari culture and society. What he found disturbed him more than he expected. The Velkari weren't evil in the traditional sense. They didn't enjoy causing suffering. They simply didn't consider it relevant to their decision-making. Everything in Velkari society revolved around economic efficiency and social status. Families rose and fell based on their wealth and reputation. A family's rating determined access to education, business opportunities, and political power. Maintaining that rating required constant management of resources and image. Children were part of that calculation. Each child represented an investment of resources with an expected return. High-performing children increased family status. Low-performing children decreased it. Defective children were liabilities that could damage a family's genetic reputation for generations. The system was logical, efficient, and completely inhuman. Taman called Hyejin on the secure communication channel. She was an old friend from his military days, now working in human intelligence. If anyone could help him understand how to hurt a Velkari trade family, it was her. Her face appeared on the screen, professional as always. Taman, I heard you've been busy rescuing alien children. News travels fast. News about humans interfering with Velkari family business travels extremely fast, Hyejin corrected. You've attracted attention. The Thon family has been making inquiries through diplomatic channels. Let them inquire. The girl is under human protection now. Legally, that's complicated. Lyra is Velkari. She was abandoned according to Velkari law, which technically makes her unclaimed property. Taman felt anger surge through him. She's not property. I agree. But that's how Velkari law sees it. We need to change that status before they can challenge your custody. How? Adopt her. Make her a human citizen. Once she's legally human, Velkari law doesn't apply. Can we do that? It's rarely done, but yes. I can expedite the paperwork through military channels. You'll need to demonstrate you can provide for her and that she consents to the adoption. She'll consent, and I can provide for her. Hyejin smiled slightly. I know you can. I'll start the process. But Taemin, you need to understand what you're starting. The Thon family won't let this go quietly. They'll see your actions as an attack on their reputation. Good, Taemin said, because that's exactly what it is. Over the next 2 weeks, Taemin worked on multiple fronts. He filed adoption papers through Human Colonial Administration. He documented everything about Lyra's rescue, including medical records, her testimony, and evidence from the abandoned colony. He hired a human lawyer who specialized in cross-species rights. But documentation wasn't enough. Taemin needed to understand his enemy better. He needed to know exactly how to hurt Velkir Thon and his family in ways that mattered to them. He reached out to human merchants who had done business with Velkari traders. He spoke with diplomats who had negotiated with Velkari officials. He even found a Velkari defector living in human space, someone who had rejected their culture and sought asylum. The defector's name was unpronounceable in human terms, so everyone called her Kay. She ran a small restaurant in a human colony, serving fusion cuisine that mixed human and Velkari flavors. She agreed to meet with Taemin. I heard about the Thon girl, Kay said as she served tea. What you did was brave, also very stupid. I keep hearing that, Taemin said. Tell me about Velkari families. How do they really function? Kay sat across from him. Her luminescent markings were faded, which happened when Velkari spent too long away from their homeworld. Velkari families are corporations. Everything is about the rating. The rating determines everything. How is the rating calculated? Wealth is the foundation, but reputation matters just as much. A family can be wealthy but have low rating if they're involved in scandals. They can be moderately wealthy but have high rating if they're respected. What damages reputation? Public failure, broken contracts, genetic defects in the family line, association with other low-rated families. Kay paused. Being publicly called out for behavior that violates galactic norms. Taemin leaned forward. The abandonment of children violates galactic norms. Yes, but most species don't know it happens. The Velkari keep it quiet. They handle these matters within their own systems. As long as no one sees it, no one can judge them for it. What if someone made them see it? Kay's eyes widened. You want to expose them? Not just them. The whole practice. I want the entire galaxy to know what the Velkari do to their children. That would destroy the Thon family. Their rating would collapse. Their business partners would distance themselves. They would become untouchable. Yes, Taemin said simply. Kay was quiet for a long moment. You understand that other Velkari families will come after you. They'll see you as a threat to their entire way of life. Let them come. Why are you doing this? She's not your species. She's not even your responsibility. Taemin thought about his answer carefully. Because she asked me why I saved her. Because she couldn't understand why anyone would think her life had value. Because a child should never feel worthless. And because if we don't stand up for the vulnerable, we're no better than the people who hurt them. Kay studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled sadly. This is very human of you, inefficient, emotional, likely to cause you significant problems. She paused. I'll help you. With Kay's inside knowledge, Taemin began to formulate his plan. It had 3 stages, each building on the previous one. Stage 1 was legal protection. Make Lyra a human citizen. Give her rights under human law. Remove any Velkari claim to her. Stage 2 was documentation. Create a comprehensive record of what happened to Lyra. Medical evidence of her near-death state. Testimony about Velkari abandonment practices. Legal analysis showing that these practices violated multiple galactic conventions on sentient rights. Stage 3 was exposure. Release everything to human media. Push for diplomatic action through human representatives on the Galactic Council. Apply economic pressure through human trade networks. Make the Thon family a test case that would force the entire galaxy to confront Velkari practices. It wasn't revenge exactly. It was justice. It was making sure what happened to Lyra couldn't happen to other children. It was forcing a powerful family to face consequences for their actions. But Taemin was honest with himself. There was some revenge in it. He wanted Velkir Thon to understand what he had thrown away. He wanted Lyra's mother and siblings to see what they had lost. He wanted them to suffer, not physically, but in the way that would hurt them most, through their precious reputation and status. He called a meeting with his crew to explain the full plan. They gathered in the galley, the heart of the ship, where they made all their important decisions. "This is going to get complicated," Taman began. "We're not just protecting Lyra anymore. We're going to war with an entire system." "We're already committed," Nari said. "The moment we opened that pod, we became part of her story. There will be consequences. The Velkari have influence. They might come after us legally. They might use their business networks to hurt us financially. They might—" "We know the risks," Junho interrupted. "We're not backing down," Minseo nodded. That girl deserves to see her family answer for what they did. Taman felt overwhelming gratitude for his crew. They weren't heroes. They were just people trying to make a living salvaging old equipment, but they were willing to stand up for what was right even when it cost them. "All right," he said. "Then let's start with Lyra. I need to talk to her about the adoption." He found Lyra in the observation deck, her favorite place on the ship. She spent hours there watching stars pass by. Taman sat beside her quietly. "I want to adopt you," he said without preamble. "Make you my daughter under human law. Make you a human citizen. It would protect you from Velkari legal claims." Lyra turned to look at him. "You want me to be your daughter?" "If you'll let me. I know I can't replace your biological family. I'm not trying to, but I can offer you something they never did. A family that will never abandon you." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because you deserve it. Because I see who you are, not what you can't do. Because my crew and I, we've become attached to you. You're already part of our family. This would just make it official. I don't know how to be someone's daughter anymore. Neither of us knows how to do this," Taman admitted. "But we'll figure it out together." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Her luminescent markings pulsed with complex emotions. Finally, she spoke in a small voice. "I would like that. Being your daughter. Being human. Being part of your family." Taman put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned against him, something she had never done before. It was a moment of trust, of hope, of new beginnings. But it was also a declaration of war. By making Lyra part of his family, Taman was telling the Velkari that humans would protect the adoption was finalized on a Tuesday morning in human colonial court. Lyra stood beside Taman, wearing simple human clothing that Nari had helped her choose. The judge was an older woman named Somin, who had presided over hundreds of cases involving refugees and displaced persons. "Do you understand what this adoption means?" Judge Somin asked Lyra gently. "You will become a human citizen. You will have rights and protections under human law. You will be legally connected to Taman and his family." "I understand," Lyra said. Her voice was stronger than it had been weeks ago. "I want this. And do you, Taman, accept the responsibilities of parenthood? To provide for this child, to protect her, to care for her welfare above your own interests?" "I do," Taman said without hesitation. "Then by the authority granted to me by the Human Colonial Administration, I declare this adoption legal and binding. Lyra is now Lyra Taman, human citizen of the Terran Commonwealth." Judge Samin smiled warmly. "Congratulations to you both." It was a small ceremony, just Taman's crew and a few officials. But it marked a fundamental shift. Lyra was no longer an abandoned Velkari child. She was human. She had protection, rights, and a family that had chosen her. After the ceremony, Hyejin pulled Taman aside. "The adoption is just the first step. Now we need to move on stage 2. The documentary? I've arranged for you to work with Daeho. He's a journalist who specializes in interspecies rights issues. He's trustworthy, and he has connections to major human media networks." Daeho turned out to be a thin man with intense eyes and a recorder implant in his temple. He met with Taman's crew on the Resilience 2 days later. After introductions, he got straight to business. "I've reviewed the preliminary information Hyejin sent me," Daeho said. "This is explosive, but I need more than documents. I need Lyra's testimony on record. I need to see the colony where she was abandoned. I need expert analysis of Velkari law. Can you provide all of that?" "We can," Taman said, "but I need your promise that this won't hurt Lyra more than she's already been hurt." "She's been through enough. I'll be as gentle as possible," Daeho promised, "but the story needs to be powerful. It needs to make people feel what happened to her. Otherwise, it's just another news piece that gets forgotten in a day. Over the next week, Deho conducted extensive interviews. He spoke with Lyra for hours, recording every detail of her abandonment. He interviewed Nari about Lyra's medical condition when they found her. He accompanied them back to the abandoned colony to document the containment pod and the sealed facility. He also brought in experts: a human psychologist who specialized in trauma, a legal scholar who analyzed Velkari abandonment laws, a Galactic Council representative who confirmed that these practices violated multiple interspecies conventions. Watching Lyra tell her story on camera was difficult for Taemin. She spoke calmly about the day her family left her to die. She described the fear, the confusion, the moment she realized they weren't coming back. She explained how she had lost track of time in the pod, how she had eventually stopped hoping for rescue and just waited for the end. But she also spoke about being found, about waking up to see human faces, about learning that not everyone measured worth in economic terms, about discovering that she could be valued simply for existing. The Velkari taught me I was worthless, Lyra said to the camera. The humans taught me I was priceless. That's the difference between our species. Deho shaped all of this material into a documentary he titled The Disposable Daughters of Velkar. It was 90 minutes of devastating testimony, hard evidence, and expert analysis. He showed it to Taemin before release. Taemin watched it in silence. When it ended, he had tears in his eyes. This will change everything. That's the goal, Deho said. I'm releasing it simultaneously on every major human media network. I've also arranged for translations into 50 other species languages. By tomorrow, everyone in known space will know what the Velkari do to their children. The Velkari won't like this. The Velkari can go to hell, Deho said bluntly. This is journalism. This is truth. If they don't like being exposed, they should stop abandoning children. The documentary released on a Monday morning, Human Standard Time. Within hours, it was everywhere. Human news networks ran it on repeat. Social media platforms exploded with reactions. Discussion forums filled with angry posts. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 2 billion times across human space alone. The response was overwhelming. Humans were outraged. The idea of abandoning children for economic reasons struck at the core of human values. Species that prioritized family bonds saw the Velkari practices as monstrous. Even species with different social structures acknowledged that the systematic disposal of young was morally wrong. The Galactic Council was forced to respond. Ambassador Jiwan, the human representative, called for an emergency session. She stood before the assembled delegates and played clips from the documentary. This is not about one child, Jiwan said. This is about systematic abuse hidden behind legal frameworks. This is about a culture that treats its young as disposable commodities. This is about fundamental sentient rights that every species in this council claims to uphold. The Velkari delegate tried to argue that this was an internal matter, that other species shouldn't interfere with Velkari cultural practices, but other delegates pushed back. The Rishari, who valued family bonds, were particularly vocal. The Torum, who had strong child protection traditions, demanded investigations. Within a week, the Galactic Council passed a resolution condemning child abandonment practices and calling for investigations into species that allowed such behavior. It wasn't legally binding, but it was a public statement that put pressure on the Velkari government. But the real damage happened in the economic sphere. Human corporations began announcing boycotts of Velkari trade partners. Any company doing business with families known to practice abandonment found themselves cut off from human markets. Since humans controlled significant trade routes and consumed vast amounts of goods, this hit hard. Individual humans organized grassroots campaigns. They identified Velkari businesses and encouraged everyone to stop using their services. They created databases of Velkari families involved in abandonment practices. They made sure everyone knew which companies were connected to these families. The Thon family was at the center of all of this. Velkir Thon's name became synonymous with child abandonment. His business partners began dropping contracts. His shipping routes lost access to human stations. His family's social rating began to plummet. Taemin watched all of this unfold from the resilience. He kept detailed records of every piece of fallout, every canceled contract, every public statement distancing from the Thon family, every percentage point their rating dropped. Lyra watched too, with mixed emotions. She was glad her story was being heard. She was glad other children might be protected. But seeing her family's empire crumble brought complicated feelings. Is it wrong that part of me still loves them? She asked Taman one evening. No, he said. Love doesn't disappear just because people hurt you. You can love who they were while hating what they did. Those feelings can exist together. I thought I would feel happy seeing them suffer, but I mostly just feel sad. That's because you're a good person. You have empathy. That's something they tried to throw away, but it's still there. 3 weeks after the documentary release, Taman received a message through diplomatic channels. It was from Velker Thon he wanted to meet. He wanted to discuss the situation. He claimed he wanted to make things right. Hyejin advised against it. It's a trap. He's probably trying to discredit you or find legal grounds to challenge Lyra's citizenship. But Taman saw an opportunity. Let him come. Let him see what his daughter has become. Let him understand what he threw away. He arranged for the meeting to take place at a neutral human station. He brought his crew and his lawyer. He made sure everything would be recorded. He told Lyra she didn't have to attend if she didn't want to. I want to be there, Lyra said. I want him to see me. The day of the meeting arrived. Taman felt nervous but determined. This was the moment everything had been building toward. The moment when Lyra would face her family and show them she had survived, despite their cruelty. The moment when Velker Thon would have to confront the consequences of his choices. Taman checked his appearance in the mirror one last time. He looked at Lyra standing beside him. She was wearing human clothing, standing straight, her luminescent markings pulsing with steady confidence. She looked nothing like the broken girl they had found in that pod. Ready? He asked. Ready? Lyra said. They walked to the meeting room together. Taman's crew flanked them protectively. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a family, and that was something the Velkari could never take away. The meeting room was cold and sterile, designed for tense diplomatic encounters. Taman sat at one end of a long table, his crew arranged behind him. Their lawyer, a sharp woman named Yunji, sat to his right with documents prepared. Lyra sat to his left, her hands folded calmly on the table. They waited in silence. Taman could feel the tension in the room. Nari stood by the door, arms crossed. Yuno kept one hand near his sidearm, though weapons were supposedly prohibited in neutral meetings. Minseo monitored the recording equipment, making sure everything was captured. The door opened. Velker Thon entered first. He was tall for a Velkari, his luminescent markings displaying the complex patterns that indicated high social status. His clothing was expensive, designed to show wealth and power. Behind him came his wife Saris, her markings more subdued but still elegant. Then their 2 children, Keth and Rila, both young adults now. Velker's eyes swept the room, taking in the humans with obvious disdain. Then his gaze landed on Lyra. He stopped moving. His markings flickered in what Taman recognized as shock. Lyra stared back at her biological father. Her face was calm, but Taman could see her fingers tighten slightly on the table. He reached over and placed his hand on her shoulder. She relaxed fractionally. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting, Velker said in perfect trade standard. He sat down across from them, his family arranging themselves behind him. I believe we have matters to discuss. We have nothing to discuss, Taman said flatly. This meeting was your request. State your purpose. Velker's markings flashed with irritation at being addressed so directly. In Velkari culture, important conversations followed elaborate protocols. Humans didn't care about Velkari protocols. You have taken something that belongs to my family, Velkir said. I am prepared to negotiate for its return. Her, Taman corrected. Not it, her name is Lyra, and she belongs to no one. She's a person, not property. Semantic distinctions, Velkir dismissed. She is Velkari. She was removed from a legal abandonment site. Under Velkari law, she's human, Yunji interrupted, sliding documents across the table. Legally adopted. Human citizen, Velkari law has no jurisdiction. Velker's lawyer, who had been silent until now, examined the documents. He whispered something to Velkir. The trade minister's markings darkened with anger. This adoption is a legal fiction designed to steal Velkari property, Velkir said. This adoption is valid under human law, Yunji countered. which is the only law that matters since it took place in human territory involving a human citizen. Saris leaned forward. Please, there must be some way to resolve this. She's our daughter. No, Lyra spoke for the first time. Her voice was steady and clear. I was your daughter. You ended that relationship when you sealed me in a pod to die. Saris's markings flickered with what might have been genuine emotion. We did what we had to do. You don't understand the pressures we faced. The economic consequences. I understand perfectly, Lyra interrupted. I understand that you valued your reputation more than my life. I understand that I was a calculation that didn't balance. I understand that you looked at your child and saw waste to be disposed of. It wasn't like that, Saris protested. We agonized over the decision. We tried to find alternatives. But there were no viable options. You couldn't interface with neural systems. You couldn't contribute to the family business. You would have been a burden for your entire life. So you left her in a pod, Taman said coldly. You flew away and let her starve to death in the dark. Tell me, how long did you agonize before you decided that was the best option? Velker's eyes narrowed. You don't understand our culture, human. You don't understand the complexities of family management in Velkari society. We make difficult choices so that our families can thrive. One individual sacrifice for collective benefit. I understand that you're monsters, Taman said. I understand that you treat your children like livestock. I understand that you hide behind fancy words like economic necessity to justify cruelty. How dare you judge us? Velkir's voice rose. Your species has its own dark history. Humans have committed atrocities against their own kind for thousands of years. You have no moral authority. You're right, Taman agreed. Humans have done terrible things. We've hurt each other in countless ways. But we learned, we grew. We decided that some things were wrong regardless of the circumstances. And one of those things is abandoning children. Keth, Lyra's brother, spoke up. This human campaign against our family is destroying everything we've built. Our contracts are being canceled. Our partners won't return our messages. Our social rating has dropped by 30 points. Do you understand what that means? I understand exactly what that means, Lyra said. It means you're experiencing consequences. It means your choices have costs. It means you can't just dispose of problems and move on anymore. We didn't have a choice, Keth shouted. You were defective. You were damaging our family's reputation. Other families were questioning our genetic quality. We were losing business opportunities because of you. So you killed me, Lyra said quietly. Or you tried to. You decided your business was worth more than my life. That's not... Rila, Lyra's sister, started to speak but faltered. Her markings showed confusion and distress. What did you think happened to me? Lyra asked, looking at her sister. Did you imagine I died peacefully? Did you tell yourself I just went to sleep and never woke up? Rila looked away, unable to meet Lyra's eyes. I was awake, Lyra continued. I was conscious the whole time. I could see the pod systems failing. I could feel myself getting weaker. I knew I was dying and I knew you had done it to me. Do you know what that feels like? Knowing your family chose to kill you? Stop, Sarah said. Please stop. Why? Lyra asked. Does it hurt to hear? Good, you should hurt. You should understand what you did. Velkir slammed his hand on the table. Enough of this emotional manipulation. I came here to negotiate, not to be lectured by a defective child and her human pets. Taman stood up slowly. His crew tensed behind him. This meeting is over. You came here thinking you could intimidate us or buy us off. But there's nothing you have that we want. Lyra is my daughter now. She's human. She's protected by human law and human values. And those values say you don't get to throw away children and face no consequences. You've destroyed our family, Velkir said. Also standing, our reputation is ruined. Our business is collapsing. Our social standing is gone. All because you couldn't leave well enough alone. Good, Taman said. I hope you lose everything. I hope every Velkari family that has ever abandoned a child faces the same consequences. I hope you spend the rest of your lives understanding that your actions have costs. You've made an enemy of a powerful family, Velkir threatened. We have resources. We have connections. We will fight this. Go ahead and fight, Taman said. Every legal action you take will keep this story in the news. Every threat you make will remind people what you did. You can't win this by attacking us. The more you struggle, the more you prove that you learned nothing. Velkir stared at Taman with pure hatred in his eyes. Then he looked at Lyra. You were always weak. always defective. I see that associating with humans has made you even weaker. You have no honor, no pride in your heritage. You're right, Lyra said calmly. I have no pride in being Velkari. I have no pride in a heritage that treats children as merchandise. I'm proud to be human now. I'm proud to be part of a species that values life over profit. Then you are dead to us, Velkir declared. You are no longer part of the Thon family. We disown you completely. I disowned you first, Lyra replied. The moment I woke up in that human medbay and realized I was going to live, I stopped being your daughter. You can't take away something I already rejected. Saris made a sound that might have been a sob. Her markings flickered erratically. I did love you once, before we knew about your condition. I need you to know that. I know, Lyra said. That's what makes it worse. You loved me when I was useful. When I became inconvenient, that love disappeared. Real love doesn't work that way. Velkir gathered his family and moved toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to Taemin. You think you've won. You think you've achieved some great justice. But all you've done is start a war between our species. Other Velkari families will see what you've done. They'll see how humans interfere with our culture. There will be consequences. I'm counting on it, Taemin said. I want other Velkari families to see what happens when you abandon children in human space. I want them to understand that humans protect the vulnerable. I want them to know that their traditions don't matter more than a child's life. The Velkari family left. The door closed behind them with a heavy sound. For a long moment, no one in the room moved. Then Lyra slumped in her chair, all the strength draining out of her. Taemin immediately knelt beside her. Are you okay? I don't know, Lyra said. Tears streamed down her face. I thought seeing them would make me feel better. I thought I would feel strong and vindicated. But I just feel empty. That's normal, Nari said, coming to Lyra's other side. You confronted the people who hurt you most. That's exhausting. Did I do the right thing? Lyra asked. Maybe I should have tried to reconcile with them. Maybe I should have... No, Taemin said firmly. You did exactly what you should have done. You stood up for yourself. You told them the truth. You refused to let the human response was relentless. It wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, organized, and absolutely devastating. Humans had a particular talent for sustained campaigns when they believed something was morally wrong. They didn't get bored or distracted easily. They held grudges in the name of justice. 3 months after the documentary release, the effects on Velkari trade were catastrophic. Human corporations that controlled major shipping lanes began requiring certification that Velkari traders did not engage in or support abandonment practices. Most Velkari families couldn't provide such certification because the practice was so common. The Thon family was hit hardest. They had built their empire on relationships with human colonies and corporations. Those relationships evaporated overnight. Contract after contract was terminated. Ships that once docked at hundreds of human stations found themselves denied access. Taemin tracked it all from the Resilience. Hyejin sent him regular updates on the economic damage. The numbers were staggering. The Thon family had lost over 60% of their business in 3 months. Their social rating, once among the top 1,000 Velkari families, had plummeted to near bottom levels. Other Velkari families are starting to feel the pressure too, Hyejin reported during a video call. 37 major families have publicly denounced abandonment practices. They're desperate to distance themselves from the Thons and salvage their own business relationships. Is it working? Taemin asked. Not entirely. Human activists are maintaining lists of families suspected of past abandonments. They're not satisfied with just words. They want proof of change. Lyra sat beside Taemin during the call. She had mixed feelings watching her biological family's empire crumble. Part of her felt they deserved it. Part of her still felt guilty, as if she was somehow responsible for their suffering. The Velkari government is being forced to respond, Hyejin continued. There's growing pressure from younger Velkari who are horrified by the abandonment practices. They've seen the documentary. They're questioning their own culture. That's good, right? Lyra asked. Yes and no, Hyejin said. Change is good, but rapid cultural change creates instability. The Velkari leadership is scrambling to control the narrative. They're blaming radical elements within their society for the abandonment practices, trying to distance the government from responsibility. But the government made it legal, Taemin pointed out. Exactly, which is why their excuses aren't working. Ambassador Jiwan is pushing hard at the Galactic Council. She's calling for formal investigations and concrete reforms. The Galactic Council investigations began 2 weeks later. Teams of neutral observers visited Valkyrie space to document abandonment practices. They found evidence of hundreds of abandoned children over the past decade. Some had been left in pods like Lyra. Others had been dumped on uninhabited planets. Some had been sold to labor operations that were barely distinguishable from slavery. The reports were damning. They confirmed everything Lyra had testified about and worse. The Valkyrie government could no longer deny the systematic nature of the practices. Human media continued to cover the story relentlessly. Every new piece of evidence was broadcast across human space. Journalists interviewed other rescued children. They documented the psychological damage caused by abandonment. They showed the economic motivations behind Valkyrie family decisions. But the most effective campaign wasn't organized by governments or large organizations. It was grassroots, individual humans making daily choices. They stopped buying Valkyrie products. They convinced their employers to sever Valkyrie contracts. They created social media movements that spread across human colonies. One particular movement gained massive traction. It was called Choose Life, Not Profit. The slogan appeared on billions of personal messages and public forums. Humans would post pictures of their own children or siblings with captions about how every life had value, regardless of economic contribution. The movement explicitly contrasted human values with Valkyrie practices. It wasn't subtle. It was designed to shame the Valkyrie into changing their behavior by highlighting the moral gap between the cultures. Valkyrie businesses tried to adapt. Some launched public relations campaigns emphasizing Valkyrie families who didn't practice abandonment. Others tried to appeal to human economic interests, arguing that boycotts hurt innocent Valkyrie who had never harmed anyone. These efforts largely failed. Humans weren't interested in excuses. They wanted systemic change. 6 months after the documentary, the economic impact had spread beyond just the Thon family. The entire Valkyrie trade network was contracting. Families that had prospered for generations found themselves struggling. The Valkyrie government was losing significant tax revenue from reduced trade. Valkyr Thon had personally lost almost everything. His shipping licenses were revoked by the Valkyrie government, which was trying to make examples of families that had drawn too much negative attention. His family estate was seized for unpaid debts. His children, Keith and Ryla, found themselves unemployable in respectable Valkyrie businesses. Taemin learned all of this through Hyejin's intelligence reports. Part of him felt satisfaction, but mostly he felt tired. This had never been about destroying one family. It was about protecting children. The Thon family's suffering was a consequence of their choices, not the goal. Lyra had a different reaction. As more details emerged about her biological family's collapse, she became quieter. She spent more time alone in the observation deck. Nari was worried about her. She's processing complicated emotions, Nari explained to Taemin. She wanted justice, but seeing the actual human cost is different than imagining it. Taemin found Lyra one evening, sitting in the darkness and watching stars drift by. He sat beside her without speaking. They stayed like that for several minutes before Lyra broke the silence. I heard Rila lost her position at the Diplomatic Academy, Lyra said quietly. She was supposed to graduate next year. Now she can't find anyone willing to sponsor her. I heard that too, Taemin said. She didn't abandon me. She was there, but she was just a child herself. Only 16. She didn't make the decision. She didn't stop it either. Could she have? Would anyone have listened to her? Lyra turned to look at Taemin. I keep thinking about all the people being hurt by this. Not just my father, but Valkyrie children whose families are losing businesses. Employees who worked for Thon companies losing their jobs. People who never did anything wrong suffering because of what my father did. That's called consequences, Taemin said gently. When powerful people make terrible choices, the effects spread beyond just them. But that's not your fault or our fault. That's on the people who built a system that treated children as disposable. I know that logically, Lyra said. But emotionally, I feel responsible. Like I caused all of this. You didn't cause anything. You were a victim. We chose to expose what happened to you. That was our choice. The economic consequences came from millions of humans making individual choices to boycott Valkyrie trade. That was their choice. Your father chose to abandon you. That was his choice. The only thing you're responsible for is surviving. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Do you think my family understands now? Do you think they regret it?
I don't know, Taman admitted.
Some people learn from consequences. Others just become bitter. I hope for your sake that they've learned something. But you can't control that. You can only control how you move forward. I want to do something, Lyra said. Something positive. All of this destruction happened because of my story. I want to use my story to build something instead. What do you have in mind? I want to help other children. The ones who were abandoned or are at risk of being abandoned. I want to work with the organizations that rescue them. I want to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Taman smiled. That's a good goal. Ambassador Jiwan mentioned there's a new organization forming to address abandonment across all species. They're looking for advocates and spokespersons, someone who has lived experience. Could I do that? I'm only 15 by human standards. Your age doesn't matter. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. If you want to do this, we'll support you. Over the next few weeks, Lyra began working with the new organization, called the Galactic Children's Protection Initiative. She testified before government committees. She spoke at conferences about sentient rights. She met with other survivors of abandonment from various species. The work was difficult. It meant constantly revisiting her trauma, constantly explaining to others what abandonment felt like. But it also gave her purpose. It turned her pain into something meaningful. Meanwhile, the pressure on Velkari society continued to build. The younger generation of Velkari, those who had grown up with more exposure to other species, began openly criticizing their own culture. They formed reform movements demanding changes to family law. They argued that abandonment was not only morally wrong but also economically stupid, as it wasted potential talent and innovation. The Velkari government, faced with economic collapse and internal pressure, finally announced major legal reforms. Abandonment would be criminalized. Families would be required to support children regardless of the 3 years past. They felt both longer and shorter than Taman expected. Long because so much had changed. Short because time moved quickly when life had purpose. The Resilient still operated as a salvage ship, but the crew's priorities had shifted. They spent half their time on advocacy work now, traveling to different systems to speak about child protection. They had become minor celebrities in human space, though none of them were entirely comfortable with the attention. Lyra had transformed completely. At 17 human years old, she bore little resemblance to the broken girl Taman had found in that pod. She was confident, articulate, and driven. She had become the face of the Galactic Children's Protection Initiative, giving speeches that moved entire audiences to tears. She had also continued her education. Human tutors taught her history, mathematics, literature, and xenopsychology. She proved to be brilliant when given the chance to learn. Her inability to interface with Velkari neural systems had never been a limitation. It had simply been incompatible with one specific technology. Her mind worked beautifully in other ways. Today was a special day. Lyra was graduating from the Human Colonial University with a degree in xenopsychology. The ceremony was being held on New Haven, a human colony world known for its educational institutions. Taman and his crew had traveled from 3 systems away to attend. Taman stood in front of a mirror in his quarters, adjusting his formal clothing. He wasn't used to wearing anything this nice. Salvagers typically lived in practical work clothes. But this was Lyra's day and he wanted to look presentable. Nari appeared in his doorway. You look nervous. I am nervous, Taman admitted. Why am I nervous? She's the one graduating. Because you're proud. Because you care. Because watching your daughter succeed is somehow more stressful than any salvage operation we've ever done. She's not really my daughter, Taman said automatically, then winced. I mean, legally she is. But we both know I'm not her real father. Stop that, Nari said firmly. You've been her father in every way that matters for 3 years. You've protected her, supported her, encouraged her, and loved her unconditionally. That's what real fathers do. Biology is just biology. Taman nodded, knowing she was right but still feeling insecure about his role in Lyra's life. He had never planned to be a father. The responsibility still frightened him sometimes. The graduation ceremony was held in a massive auditorium. Thousands of students from dozens of species were graduating today. The crowd was enormous, filled with proud families from across known space. Taman sat with his crew in the section reserved for Lyra's family. The seat felt earned in a way that made his chest tight with emotion. When Lyra's name was called, Taman stood up and cheered loudly. His crew joined him. Around them other families stared, but he didn't care. His daughter was walking across that stage and he was going to celebrate. Lyra accepted her diploma from the university chancellor. Her luminescent markings pulsed with joy. She had chosen to keep her Velkari appearance rather than undergo cosmetic modifications. "I'm not ashamed of what I am," she had explained once. "I'm just ashamed of where I came from." After the ceremony, there was a reception for graduates and their families. Lyra found Taman in the crowd and hugged him tightly. "Thank you for being here. I wouldn't miss this for anything," Taman said. "I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Without all of you." She looked at Nari, Junho, and Minseo, who had gathered around. "You saved my life. You gave me a reason to live. You taught me that I had value." "You always had value," Nari said. "We just helped you see it." The celebration continued for hours. Other graduates and their families approached Lyra, congratulating her and thanking her for her advocacy work. Many had followed her story. Some had been inspired by her resilience. A few were survivors of abandonment themselves from various species and wanted to share their own experiences. Later that evening, after most people had left, Lyra gave her commencement speech. She had been selected as the graduate speaker, chosen by a vote of her peers. Taman sat in the front row, watching her stand before the remaining crowd with confidence. 3 years ago, Lyra began, I was dying in a sealed pod on an abandoned mining colony. My own family had left me there because they decided I wasn't worth the resources to keep alive. I had given up hope. I had accepted that my life was ending, and that I would die believing I was worthless. Her voice was steady, but Taman could see the emotion behind her words. He had heard this story many times, but it never got easier to hear. Then a human salvage crew found me. Captain Taman and his team opened that pod, not knowing what they would find. They could have left me there. They could have decided I wasn't their problem. But they didn't. They saved me. They brought me aboard their ship. They fed me, healed me, and most importantly, they told me I deserved to exist. Lyra paused, looking directly at Taman. I didn't believe them at first. How could I? Everything I had been taught told me I was defective. Everything in my culture said I was worthless. But they kept insisting. They kept showing me through their actions that I had value, not because I could contribute to some economic calculation, not because I had useful skills, simply because I was alive. The audience was completely silent. Lyra continued. That's when I learned the difference between Velkari culture and human culture. The Velkari measure worth by utility. Humans measure worth by existence. The Velkari treat life as a resource to be managed. Humans treat life as sacred to be protected. She gestured to encompass the diverse audience. I'm not saying humans are perfect. Every species here has flaws. Every culture makes mistakes. But humans have something special. They have this incredible capacity for compassion. They care about strangers. They fight for people they've never met. They organize, they persist, they refuse to accept cruelty as normal. My biological family abandoned me to die, Lyra said, her voice growing stronger. My human family taught me to live. They taught me that my inability to interface with neural systems doesn't define me. They taught me that my value isn't measured in economic terms. They taught me that every single person, regardless of their capabilities, deserves respect and protection. Taman felt tears streaming down his face. He wasn't embarrassed. Half the audience was crying. Now I'm graduating with a degree in xenopsychology, Lyra continued. I'm going to dedicate my life to helping children across all species. I'm going to work to end abandonment practices wherever they exist. I'm going to make sure that no child ever feels worthless again. She looked out at the graduates in the audience. To my fellow graduates, I want to say this. You're entering a galaxy that's complicated and sometimes cruel. You'll encounter injustice. You'll see suffering. You'll face situations where helping seems impossible or impractical. But I'm asking you to be like the humans who saved me. Be the people who open the pod instead of leaving it sealed. Be the people who care about strangers. Be the people who fight for those who can't fight for themselves. My biological family taught me I was disposable, Lyra said. My human family taught me I was priceless. That difference, between being treated as a problem to be eliminated and being treated as a person to be valued, that's everything. That's the difference between a culture of death and a culture of life. She finished with a final thought. I stand here today not as a victim but as a survivor. Not as defective but as different. Not as worthless but as priceless. And I stand here thanks to humans who believed that every life matters. Thank you, Captain Taman. Thank you to my crew family. Thank you to everyone who stood up for children like me. You changed my world. Now let's change the galaxy. The applause was deafening. People stood cheering and crying. Taman stood too, clapping until his hands hurt. His crew surrounded him, all of them emotional. They had known Lyra would give a powerful speech, but this exceeded all expectations. After the ceremony finally ended, Lyra came back to where Taman waited. She was still glowing with adrenaline from the speech. Did I do okay? You were perfect, Taman said, pulling her into a hug. I'm so incredibly proud of you. I meant every word, Lyra said. Especially the part about family. You're my real family. You, Nari, Junho, Minseo, all of you. Biology doesn't matter. Choice matters. Love matters. Nari joined the hug, then Junho and Minseo. They stood there in a group embrace. This unlikely family formed by chance and cemented by choice. Later, as they walked through the colony streets toward their hotel, Lyra asked Taman a question. Do you ever wonder what happened to them? To my biological family? Sometimes, Taman admitted. Do you? Less than I used to. I heard from someone that my father sent a message a few months ago. Did you see it? I saw it, Taman confirmed. Velkir had sent a brief communication acknowledging that Taman had been correct in his assessment of Lyra's value. It wasn't an apology. His pride wouldn't allow that. But it was the closest to admission of wrongdoing the man would ever come. Did you respond? Lyra asked. No, some lessons come too late. He threw away his chance to be your father. He doesn't get to claim any part of your success now. Lyra nodded. Good, I don't need his approval. I don't need his recognition. I have everything I need right here.